Good evening, good afternoon.
Michael,
How do you
good
do?
evening or good afternoon. I'm back in my office.
All right, yes. Yeah, so how was the trip?
Was quite fine. I was just in Montpellier to support my daughter who was having her exams.
Mm-hmm.
So that's always a difficult period, but then it's good to be around.
Yeah, indeed. So what was she studying?
She's studying medicine, so but
Excellent.
it's only the first year,
Ah,
so
okay.
she still has a long way to do. Um,
Indeed.
no, but that's something I don't know, so I cannot help her. I can just be there and yeah.
Yep, yep. I'm sorry, I can't even pronounce these words. I can't even read the test to you. It's
Oh,
uh,
just listening and then yeah, helping prepare food, make sure she
mm-hmm.
sleeps enough. This type of thing. Um, yeah,
Indeed.
but
Yeah.
that changes life. Then I carry with me a small computer and some old screens and put myself in a corner to work a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it works much better on a fast computer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was the tablet that was the problem the last couple of times because I'm not sure
Yeah,
what
because
you did to fix it, but it
well,
started
I
going much better.
just I disabled the echo cancellation, and there was another thing like sound improvement,
Mm,
uh, some speech processing that I disabled, and then it
okay.
worked fine. So I
Okay.
guess
Yeah.
it was just yeah,
It
it
was.
was just a small netbook with 2 GB RAM
Mm-hmm.
and an old Atom processor.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was the Atom processor which was not strong enough.
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to buffer up that audio so it could do the processing, and yeah, just
Mm,
I had to buffer too much, and then it just let it all go in a burst. Okay. Cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was glad to finally connect with Sergey last week.
Mhm.
That was that was very good. So yeah, it's. We made it all the way through the book before we were able to connect, um, but yeah, I
But
think it did some good.
perhaps he will be back this week because he was really looking for a solution to synchronize. Also, was my impression.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um, the
yeah.
fact that he was had been looking at Datomic
Mm-hmm.
and at that old paper from Patrick Reed, if I remember well. Um,
I believe that's the correct name.
mm,
Yeah, um, yeah. The pseudo time concept. Yeah, I think yeah, the pseudo time, Datomic, and a few other examples I can think of. They um, they try to. It seems to me that they're trying to keep as much of the concepts as they can from our more traditional. I'm starting to think of it as like Turing-based computing. So it's like, okay, yeah,
mm,
thinking about this thing in terms of a Turing machine because this is what it's actually doing, and so therefore I'm going to level up that abstraction to how I build my program. So I'm thinking of reading some state, moving over here, writing some state, um, and so it seems that they're trying to be as familiar as possible to that way of thinking, and therefore put additional constraints uh, on the solution that don't necessarily need to be there. So,
mm,
like in Datomic, it's a five tuple that you end up with as your solution. Um, so Wi-Fi, what is special about those specific values that are in that tuple, as opposed to just abstracting that away and saying, okay, it's just relationships. It's just one arrow back to the prior fact. Just like with
mm,
pseudo time. So we're trying to impose another linear time scale on top of our data, and that's because we're used to thinking about things that progress linearly. But why let that go, and then you can be more general.
I didn't go through the paper this week, because this week I I didn't do anything about the historical modeling. I had no time since our previous chat. The only thing I downloaded the thesis from David Reed, because in the paper he mentioned that it was based that there was more explanation in his thesis, which he made at MIT, and that thesis is available online.
Okay.
So, because the paper is quite dense, but I think the thesis should be easier to grab, but it's much more pages.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've been
perhaps. Yeah.
I've been focusing on getting ready for the talk tomorrow, so I haven't gone through that. But after tomorrow's talk, and then I'm teaching a class for the last half of the week, then I'll actually be able to relax and won't have to prepare for anything. So I'll be able to read math papers again.
That will be a class about historical modeling, or?
Partially. It's a class on distributed systems design, and it is primarily focused on using mass transit. So, of course, mass transit is not a historical modeling solution, but yet you can use historical modeling to analyze your problem, design messages, and then use those within mass transit. So that's the part that I'm bringing in, is using it as an analysis tool and for message design. In preparing for it, I watched a lot of Chris Patterson's videos on how he uses mass transit, and saw a lot of his posts as I'm reading all sorts of different Stack Overflow questions. I run into a problem, search it, Stack Overflow. Okay, the person who answers, of course, is Chris Patterson, and so I've definitely been exposed to a lot more of his thinking as I've been preparing for it, and he's thinking very topologically. So it seems whenever I see him on a video, making a decision about what line of code to write next, he's thinking about the topology of how many consumers are going to be going after this queue. What's the expected throughput of these messages? How long do you expect the processing to take? What's a good timeout? So he's reasoning through all of these problems, and so to my mind, I'm thinking, I'm glad somebody does, but that's not what I want to do. I want to ignore the topology as much as possible, and completely separate the idea of consistency and causality from topology. So it's it's an interesting little dichotomy that very topological thinking, very topological library, and this is what I'm teaching, but yet I think over here.
A little bit of contrast with the ideas you're trying to implement.
Yeah.
How is the preparation for the JavaScript and friends?
Let me share with you something. So I posted on what was it? Oh goodness, I'm trying to remember what the URL was for it. But I've uploaded the example application to Azure. So it would be shared list-janaga.azurewebsites.net. Yep. Wait, nope, that's not it. Let me actually go to my Azure portal and see if I can find it again. because I'm going to have to put this into the slides and tell everybody to go there. Yeah, the idea is that I want people to first of all be able to experience the full working application. So, so go up there.
If I search for shared list, I only get the GitHub repository.
Oh, okay, it's Janaga shared list. I had those backwards. So
Janaga shared list or lists plural.
Singular.
And then dash or dot Azure.
.azurewebsites.net. So first of all, I will post that in general. And then I will also share the screen. Okay. And it seems to be taking a little while to get started up. I did deploy to the free tier, so that might be
it must be that, because also on my side is loading very slowly. Yeah, it's the same URL I was using.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and hit restart on this thing just to make sure.
Also, my site is not getting through.
All right, well, this might need a little bit more attention before tomorrow.
Always better to discover it today than tomorrow.
Yep. Yep, that is true. So what I'll go ahead and stop the screen share. Yeah, so what I've set up is first of all, I enabled CORS on the Janaga endpoint on AzureWebsites.net. That means that it should be able to receive a connection from any browser, no matter what what site that browser loaded, and so that allowed me to bring up localhost, so I can make changes to the application in real time and show localhost connected to the remote server. And so the plan is give everybody the URL, let them create a list. I'll tell them, well, hey, type in this list, go into that one, and then trusting you, but anything that you put on the list, we'll be able to see it pop up here in real time. And so in order to make that happen, I did enable the subscribe mechanism.
Yeah.
So it's using a pretty quick and dirty subscription, so it's not server sent events like I want it to be, but it's just a polling mechanism. But it's enough to get the point across that somebody can make a change and you can see it happening in real time.
And that is activated in the Jinaga source code, which is also available on the web, or not in the in the npm package?
No, not in the npm package. It is in a it's in a branch right now on the Jinaga repository.
Okay.
But I didn't publish it to npm. Instead, I built the sample application against that local repository, and then just pushed the the resulting source or the output.
Oh, it gives an answer now. Web server received an invalid response while acting as a gateway or proxy server. So
Okay. Oh, mine just came back, so try refresh on that. And let's see if...
Yeah, shared list. Now it works.
Okay. So that means we should be able to go to a shared list like Janaga.
Yeah.
And so now we're at shared list / Janaga. And if I enter a new item, create a fact, when I hit enter, it shows up on my screen, and it should show up on yours as well. Yep, I see help.
Yeah. Okay.
There we go.
It works.
Yep. So we have a crazy live demo where people can just put whatever they want on the screen that I'm showing to the rest of the world. So
yeah.
So that should be fun. What could possibly go wrong with that? But then I should be able to open up VS Code, and I'm looking for... Yeah, I didn't have the source code already loaded for today, but if I go to shared... Oh. Yeah, trying to load it to VS Code. You know what? I did all of this... Yeah, this is another good thing to test out. I did all of this experimentation in preparation on my laptop, and I don't have the code here yet. But yeah, so I can open up the application, and then where it says janagabrowser.create and gives the HTTP endpoint, there I just type in https Janaga shared Azure websites.net /Janaga, and that is the endpoint for exchanging facts. And then I'll be able to work on the application, and every time I run it, it's going to pull the facts from the running app. So I'll be able to go back to the list and see what people have added to the list.
Yeah.
So as you see, and as you've already noticed, when you clear an item, it disappears. So this is before your change to show the completed items, and so I will go through making that change during the talk, and so that'll kind of get across the idea of how to create new controls and new bindings.
Mm-hmm. That will be a nice demonstration. But anyway, you only have about 50 minutes, I think.
Yeah. So it's going to be a bit of a challenge. I'm going to have to practice that quite a bit.
That's going to be a challenge. Michael, if you don't mind, I still had a few questions last time when I was programming. Some things that I still saw where I was wondering. And that list I have here. On the website, in export modal, where was that? Export modal. Yeah, and there you write somewhere, we need to know that what J is. Before it was an instance of Jinaga, but now we'll define it as an alias for the Jinaga class itself. I guess it was in TypeScript then. Export modal.
That's necessary in either TypeScript or JavaScript.
Then it's perhaps in JavaScript. I'm looking where it was. Strange. Just search for it. No, it doesn't find it. Strange. Has the website been changed in the meanwhile? Because I copied some.
It sounds familiar, and I think that is still what it says.
Yeah. Okay, I found it. Export model JavaScript. Actually, I can just share it if I make it the right dimension here. It's perhaps which one is that? Shared file applications. No, it's all black. Let's see.
That's all right. I've got it. Got it showing here.
Is that the website that you see? Swap your application to resume. What is it doing? Stream paused, he says.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the stream, but I have brought up the application, so, or I brought up the website.
Yeah. Okay. One of the other reason it's not working. So you have exporting the model, then first paragraph, exporting specification functions.
Yes.
And then it says create a new file, source shared model.js. Move the function that we've defined into that file. Notice to do that, we need to know what J is. Before it was an instance of Jinaga, but now we'll define it as an alias of the Jinaga class itself.
Yeah, and I'm not really explaining there why the change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the motivation there is that before, when it was inside of the test itself, we had an instance of Jinaga to work with, but then when we export it to the model, this model is shared, so it's either it's useful both on the client and on the server. On the client, we've got an instance of J defined because we used Jinaga browser to create it. On the server, we don't have that, and the things that we need from J are the static methods anyway. So j.match, j.exists, j.not, and so.
These are just static methods which are in the Jinaga class.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But on the server, you also have Jinaga server.
Yes.
So we could use that one as well. But yeah, then you need to know in advance. Now it's compatible with both server and client. That's the reason.
Right. Right. Okay. So here we can just have one line at the top that does require Jinaga, and then aliases that to J, and it works in either case. An alternative, which is something that I hadn't actually done before, is to just actually use Jinaga.match, Jinaga.exists, so that you just spell it out. So, and that would work everywhere. I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about that, because on the one hand, I like that because there is a difference between the static methods and the instance methods, and it's an important difference about is this attached to some actual data? So j.fact is an instance method because it's putting a fact into an instance of Jinaga. So it's it's running there in the browser. It's going to update the user interface. It's going to send it to the server because it's been configured with an HTTP endpoint. It might even save it to local storage if it's configured with IndexedDB. And so j.fact is an instance method. You couldn't call Jinaga.fact. Same thing with j.query. So you're querying from an instance. It's tied to some data, or j.watch. But match exists not. These are all things that define specification functions, and a specification function is just a specification function independent of how it's applied. So it's not tied to the data until you do a j.query or a j.watch.
Okay.
So yeah, I could get into the habit of just using jnaga.match instead of j.match, and then this would be less confusing. But I have gotten used to the brevity.
Well, now it's very compact.
Mm-hmm.
J.not, j.match. I would just leave it like that and just add a little explanation on that topic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be fine.
Makes sense.
Then another one. In docs composition. So then we are in Jnaga React, I assume. Composition. So somewhere constant text sender is message. Yeah. On the composition page, do you have that in front of you?
Yeah, so...
It's on the Jnaga React and then composition.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then you see the second black box, the code.
Yes.
We have if result is null, then return else constant text sender equal to message. Why message? Doesn't that have to be result there?
Let's see. Yeah, so you're... So yeah, you're doing a... Yeah, I must admit this is a method that I think I've used only once. But text sender... Yeah, I think
the result
correct.
comes from the message spec, and message specs is the first black box there, which returns a text
and that's
a
where
sender.
the text and sender come from. Yeah, you're right. You're correct. So, yeah.
So that
I'm going to have to go back and find where I wrote this code, because it clearly didn't work at the time that I wrote it. Yeah.
And then I had a question about ensure. Now I should dig myself into the source code of Jnaga, but the lazy way is just ask it to Michael. For example, you have function author of post, and then the first thing you do is ensure that post has an author before you return the match of that author. But imagine that post has no author, that instance of post has no author. Then what is going to happen is ensure just going to throw an error.
Yeah, that is... I'm trying to get to a place where I can see a good example of that. What page were you looking at?
I just wrote it down in a text file here, but I remember I got it from somewhere from, let's search, perhaps export the model. No.
I think it's in authorized facts.
That could be authorized facts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what reminded me that it has to do with authorization is that most of the time when you are building an application, you want to do a successor, but authorization usually starts with the predecessor. So it's like, that's the user that's supposed to be able to do this. So yeah, the weird thing that's happening here is the specification function is never actually called with a real fact. It's just made to look like it is. So when that next line says return j.match post.author, when that executes, if you didn't have the insurer, then post.author would be undefined. What's actually being passed in there is a proxy. So that's a class that I set up to kind of record the things that are done to it within a specification function. So ensure post has author. Honestly, what ensure post does is it returns post. So it just returns the proxy itself. But in order to make TypeScript happy with that, so has is a method on proxy, and so what would happen if the actual author fact, if the actual post fact didn't have an author, it's okay because it would never get passed into this function. This function just simply helps it to create a query that would match against the author of a post. So when it runs that query, essentially it's going to run that query against the database ideally, or eventually. It'll get into Postgres, and it will have a where clause in there looking for a relationship to a predecessor. And so if the fact that you're looking for, if this particular post doesn't have that relationship, it just won't be returned. So you'll get the expected results, is that that post won't match. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So in fact, if that post fact has no author, then it will create a kind of proxy where there is an artificial author that doesn't match anything. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's really just that the proxy is only used at runtime to evaluate this specification function. So it just figures out what the specification function means. And so for example, when you say j.query, and then you say j.for this specification function, it's going to create a proxy, pass it into the specification function, and then the function is going to return a match, and now the proxy will be somewhere inside of that match that gets returned. So we'll be able to investigate. So we're matching. Here's this JSON object, and then it's got this proxy object stuck in here somewhere. So we say, okay, I know that I'm looking for a fact that has these fields and a certain relationship with the starting fact. And so it then compiles that into a query. Ideally, it would compile it into a pipeline. In future versions, it'll be a full pipeline, but you can think of it as just one thread through a pipeline. And so that thread through the pipeline says, starting at a post, join in the direction of successor along the role author. So here's my starting fact post, and now give me the author of that post. So now if that author that you're starting with doesn't have, if that post that you're starting with doesn't have an author, then when you run that query, you're going to get back an empty result, an empty set. So,
And does that mean that even if the post has an alter, that you still have to run the ensure? In that case, if you
yes.
would leave out ensure, that you would have troubles?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, if you were to leave out the ensure, then post.author would be undefined, and so you'd be calling j.match with undefined, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where you'd have troubles. I think um, I think I put some checking in there to give you a reasonable error message. At least I hope I did. But yeah, it should tell you. Oh, wait a minute! I just got an undefined in here. You really should be calling ensure on something.
Okay. I think it's an incentive for me to start checking the source code, to start digging into that to find out.
Yeah, that is one of the more complicated parts of the system, and
Mm,
also the one that has the most tests, I believe. Um, in fact, we can pull that up. So let me go to that project, see if we can find where this is. So it would be let me share the full screen there. Okay.
yeah, I see it. Yeah, there is the quote.
Okay. So there should be a query parser. That's the thing that does all of this magic. And so right next to it, oh, actually, yeah, I didn't put the tests next to it. I put the tests in a different folder. Yep. So here is the parser spec. So this is probably a good way to see how this is going to work. So here's a version that uses ensure, list of task. So ensure that T has a list. This is doing one additional step, which I have turned out not to do in practice, but it is possible to do, is to further constrain that this predecessor is of a particular type. So with list of task, so we can see some tests here that are using it. So when I say parse the query by calling j.for list of task, then I can turn it into a descriptive string, and that's a string that's easy to kind of visualize the steps of the pipeline, which is also the string that shows up in the API call. So if you take a look in the browser and you see it making query calls to the server, it's passing these descriptive strings. So for list of task, it's going to first of all start with the fact that you're querying from, and constrain that its type must be task, and that's that additional step that I added there, and then take a look at it, and then follow the predecessor in the role list. And so parse query figures out how to turn that template function into that descriptive string, that sequence of steps. So yeah, here it's saying, okay, the type must be task, and then we're just going to match on the predecessor list. So if we take a look at parse query, this is the real fun stuff. So we've got our well, that's the preposition. Actually, it's j.for that we want to take a look at. that's where the fun happens. So J.4 has a specification function which takes our target and then gives us back a specification. And uses preposition for. Preposition for. It creates a new preposition. It does the parse template from that specification. Here we go. This is the thing that does the magic. So what we actually send into this template, which now we have, we've stripped out all the type information out of it. So now the target isn't our starting fact, it's just any. And the thing that it returns, it says is just any. So it's not even constrained to returning a specification. So what it actually sends in is a parser proxy. And if you take a look at parser proxy, you'll see that has is a method on the proxy. So, all that does is it makes sure that this has a property called name, and it sets that to a new proxy. So now, when you find a proxy, you can follow the path to see where it came from. So this parser proxy came from the one that I started with, and used this particular property name to get there.
Yep.
And so this create query, this is where it starts to get really complicated, and basically I test drove my way to making this work. But yeah, this is going to take a look at the the proxy and figure out the path that got you there. So parent and role. So this top level one that you're starting with, no parent, no role. But then if you do has, then it's one level deep. So it says, okay, that's the parent, and the role that it came from is this name. So once I've got my specification back from the specification function, then I find the target. I find the proxy inside of it, and so that's going to kind of just go down through all of the different properties that you specified on that specification. So all the different fields, and then once you find one that somewhere in here, it's checking to see if it's an instance of. Yeah, I think find target. Oh, that's recursive. Yeah, I forgot where it. Oh, yeah, right there at the top. Yeah. So as soon as it finds a specification that's an instance of a parser proxy, then it says, okay, I've gotten down through the specification into a proxy, and now I'm working my way back up all of that predecessor chain. And so that's what this create query does. So follow all of the parents and recursively call create query on those, and you're creating a whole bunch of join predecessors on the way back up, and on the way down to that, you were doing a whole bunch of join successors as you're going down into the specification. So it's really complicated what it has to do in order to.
It's perhaps something where I best step through with the debugger with a practical example to see what happens, perhaps.
Yeah, that might help. Now this whole idea of a specification function that this j.match, this is basically like an example of the thing that I want to match. So give me anything that has type task and a list that is this particular predecessor. That whole idea, that was basically the seed of the Janaga.js idea that occurred to me while I was driving home from Florida back in 2015. Coming back from Code on the Beach. And and so that was basically, how can I use JavaScript the way that people are familiar with JavaScript as this dynamic language, and and express a structure. And so that's where that came from. When we make the transition to C#, I expect that this is going to look very different. I'm not sure if the specification function idea is going to survive into C#.
Yeah.
So it could be something more akin to LINQ.
I will go through it and try to understand the magic, and then see how we can implement that in C#.
Yeah, as you're thinking through that, I would say don't constrain yourself to the specification function schema that we're seeing here. If there is a better way to express this kind of a relationship in LINQ, then I would say make a wish. I wish that I could say that that I'm matching against these relationships, and I've got iQueryables to work with. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we should be able to take that wish and turn that into some tests, and then test drive our way to something that produces these descriptive strings. So basically, if we could just write this would be probably one of the first tests that I would really want to write, is because we do want to target the existing Janaga server, and we know that the Janaga server speaks these strings. We know that it's going to have to do this. So yeah, and that's a relatively small part of the library. It's pretty core to the library, but it's isolated. So yeah, we can test drive just that and see if we can find an expression that really makes a lot of sense.
So if we get to that common format, that should be okay.
Yeah. And so to give you a little bit of insight into this format, f dot means it's a filter that will only pass through facts that have a particular field value, and so type is actually just a convention as far as this is concerned. When we get to storage, so like when you store something in Postgres, type becomes much stronger than a convention. But and so here you'll really only see f.type. But yeah, this is the specification language is actually allowing you to constrain any of the fields to be any specific value. But I kind of walked away from being able to constrain facts by the values of their fields, and said, okay, just types. So you'll see f.type, and then you'll see p dot, and so this means for every fact that's coming into that pipeline step, I want you to fan out to all of the predecessors in this particular role. So you output all of the task predecessors for this completion. And in this case, since a completion is supposed to have just one task, this is just one input to one output. But the specification language doesn't know that. It could be a singular, it could be multiples, it could be zero. So it allows them all. Then we've got another f dot. So the only other one is an s dot, so successor join. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not the only other one. So successor join is also based on a role. Now, this is kind of the interesting thing here, which you might have noticed in the book as well. And this would be in Query Inverses. When we're talking about
Take the book.
toward the beginning, sequence of steps. So yeah, this would be page 292 is where this gets started. So these kind of diagrams that were really difficult to draw. These were in PowerPoint. Yeah, so the role is the name of the field from the successor's point of view. So so like here I am on a I'm starting on a task. This is a good example. And so I am looking for my predecessor list. So list is the name that lost him.
Yeah,
There we are.
I'm back.
Okay. Yep, so we're starting on the task and we're looking for predecessor list. And so list is the name that the task gives to its parent, to its predecessor. And so that means if I were starting on the list and I was looking for my successor tasks, the role name is list. So the role name is not task. And that's why right here it's now filtering that by the successor type. So starting at my list, I've got, this, from this pipeline step, I've fanned out and now I've got all of my tasks. Well, actually, I've got all of my successors that call me their list. And then I filter that down to just those that are of type task.
Okay.
So that's how those are working. And then we get into the exists and not exists. And so the exists and not exists, those are the filter arrows that have the bar that goes down to another pipeline. So if that other pipeline, right here, if that returns 0 results, then not exists is true and exists is false, or vice versa. If it returns 1 or more results, then not exists is false, exists is true. And so that pipeline step filters those facts, and so it lets through those for which the N or the E is true.
Okay. So these are, in fact, the queries written in another language.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. So this this descriptive string syntax is a way to serialize a pipeline, but it's a constrained pipeline. So this was the thing that I kind of discovered while I was writing that chapter. Is I was intending to just document this algorithm, but then as I got into it and started to try to prove it, I was like, whoa, there's stuff missing here. This algorithm is incorrect. Okay. And it stems from the fact right here that this syntax can only represent a narrow strip of a pipeline. So it can't fan out and from this point go in multiple directions. So like from this task, give me the predecessor list and the predecessor user, and then bring those back together, whereas a real pipeline can do that. And so that's how a pipeline can turn into an entire projection, whereas these pipelines are constrained to be this single path, and so they give you back a single homogeneous set of facts at the end, as opposed to an entire tree. and then things like the projection in Janaga React has to string a bunch of these together in order to build it into a tree.
So that means that in the end, this syntax will have to be extended.
Yes, that is correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, but I think that if we start with this syntax, then what we're really iterating on is what does a specification function look like in C#? What does it look like in .NET?
Mm-hmm.
And for that, I really wouldn't mind taking some examples from Entity Framework. So maybe it makes sense for a predecessor to define a navigation property to its successors, and then we can use that navigation property here. Maybe the navigation property is a specification function. Maybe it's not a property at all, but an extension method. Because a C# extension method takes one parameter, which is considered this. So so it has kind of the right the right feeling to it, that you're
Almost,
starting from the task and then you're getting the list for those tasks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's find out a way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Will be a little bit thinking.
Yeah.
Trying to map from one thing to another.
Yeah, that is the fun part about library design is eventually you're going to have to support this, and you're going to have to explain it to people, and it's going to have to make sense. But in making sense, you don't want to tell too many lies, but you have to tell some lies. So Janaga.js tells you a lie that says, hey, this specification function takes a task. No, it doesn't. It takes a proxy. And so you have this ensure thing to make it happy. And if you don't use ensure, then something ends up as undefined and you have no idea why. Well, why is because the author lied to you.
Yeah. It was a simple answer, but with quite a deep question. Still have a little bit time in concepts. Retrieving information. Yeah, that's back on top. Retrieving information, and there at the bottom, in the diagrams, because we have there the watch diagram, and that could be, we could have a second watch behind it. That was it. Would it be more clear if we put the j.watch and the watch in a single diagram with a loop back? Because in fact, so what you do from the end, you just add .watch with a bracket, and then you get back into just before preposition.
Yeah, because that's where the syntax starts to line up again.
Yeah, because now it's a little bit confusing. You have the purple block as a header, and then if you want, I will make a PR for that.
Yeah.
I will try it out, and then you can see whether it's better or not.
Yeah. Okay. Because what I'm trying to convey there is the fact that you will, well, it doesn't really convey this at all, but yeah, the truth that I want to convey is that you will take this j.watch and you'll assign it to a variable, and then you'll use that variable to do another .watch. And so if you were to if you didn't use the variable and you just went into another .watch from there, then you would lose that point in the tree. So you're going to start with I'm going to watch for all of the posts on a blog, and then for that post, I'm going to watch for the titles. I'm going to watch for the author name. I'm going to watch for comments. And so you're going to use that same post watch 3 times. And so you have to assign it to a variable. If you were to just continue the dots, you would only be able to do one of those continuations. So
I see. And indeed, if we do it in a loop, that's not going to give that impression.
Yeah. Yeah, this doesn't really give that impression either, though. Unless you think in the abstract and you kind of infer another idea on here that the pink box represents a variable. So the big pink box is on the left-hand side of an equal sign with the first line next to it. And then that variable shows up in the line after. And then you can assign that to another variable. Maybe that can be made explicit. Maybe there can be a watch variable. And the assignment statement can just be part of the diagram. So we've got a watch variable equals j.watch, etc. And then watch variable equals a watch variable dot watch for the next line.
Yeah, I'll just write it out. Watch variable equal to, and then the first line of the diagram. And then you can say watch variable, and then continue. Put that watch variable in the diagram like you did on line 2. I think the confusing thing now is that you use the purple color in the second block, and that you don't explicitly define that as a variable, which is equal to the first line.
Yeah.
I will think about it and see what we can do about it.
Yeah, and I was just looking at the source code above it, and it doesn't show using the watch variable in another watch, so it doesn't actually demonstrate that capability. So the description above could be improved as well.
Okay. The idle watches. I never go into a second. No. Okay, I will have a look at that and see if it can be improved. Was there still? Yes, still something. Sometimes you use projection for as a name for a specification for.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is just transitional. I intend to just rename it to projection for.
Okay, and then forget about specification for.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Because
I find it cool.
Yeah, I used the name specification for the wrong thing. We ended up saying, template functions are specification functions. That makes sense. So this is not a specification. This is a projection.
Okay. No, it was just confusing. And then a last point. In application, we have the web server. And we have the distributor. Yeah. That's what I would propose as a name. The web server is just serving the client to the browser.
Yeah.
while the distributor is the server that serves the fact to all the clients.
Yes. Yes. And that will help out with this this issue that kind of seeded the whole documenting things in terms of steps idea. So the original author of that issue came back and responded after reading through some of the steps and clarified the way that they were trying to attack the problem was to use create React app in order to create a client application. Create React app sets up a web server, explicitly using that definition you just used, that you cannot hook into the underlying Express, so you cannot set up a distributor inside of it. And so he was using Create React App, and he wanted to be able to connect this application to a distributor, which is precisely what I'm doing during the demo, because I set up cores on the distributor so I could do that. So yeah, I think by calling that out explicitly, and yeah, as you were saying there, so we've got a step right now for creating a web server, and then there's another step for creating Janaga server. That's setting up the distributor.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the nomenclature we should use.
It's just a proposal. We might use other names as well, but I think if we go back to correspondence, there we use the term distributor.
Yeah.
Which I think is a very good name. We distribute facts, and a web server normally serves a web page or an index.html.
Yeah. And the two should be able to live completely independent of one another, which is what this this person who raised the issue was trying to accomplish. And right now, because of the type system, and because I've joined both the client and the server into one package, one npm package, you can't do that. So if I split them apart, then all the types can be attached to the client side package, and all the server side types can be attached to the server side package. We can call that one Janaga distributor. That's the right name for that package.
Yeah. Because right now, for somebody who gets into it, even just a small application, it's confusing.
Yeah.
Because you don't immediately think about the difference between the two.
Mm-hmm.
That will be different if we work on .NET, where you have, for example, your desktop application, so it's not served by the web server.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Your Xamarin application doesn't come from the web. You have the Blazor application would, but that's still working within this type of ecosystem. But yeah, definitely need to break through that, and that nomenclature is the first step.
Okay.
Very good. Yeah. I'm glad I didn't publish those the split package yet, because this is the correct name. Yeah. In fact, it's just I'll keep Janaga as just the client side, and then Janaga distributor will be the distributor. So you have to set up Janaga and Janaga distributor, and then you'll have them both. Yeah.
There were just some ideas I had while I was playing with the code. Good. That was, I think, all what I wrote down. Yeah.
Excellent.
But last time there was no time for this question, so I kept them for this time. Okay. No, because Sergey came with us, and I think when there is somebody new to Jinaga, it's not a moment to start talking about that because then we lose them immediately.
Yeah.
But it's a pity that he didn't join today again.
Yeah.
I find it funny that regularly we have new people coming in, but they, for one or the other reason, they disappear again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It could be that they they get what they need out of the conversation. They've read through the book. They've got their questions answered, and they're off. So yeah, I think it's I think it might take a few iterations to catch a few people that are wanting to invest in developing the open source projects long term.
Yeah. Now I hope with your new presentation now that the documentation has been improved a lot, that might make a big difference.
Yeah, I think so.
Let's see how it goes, and otherwise another iteration. Rome has not been built in one day.
No.
So.
Nope, and there's always more work to do after each one. So it's never going to stop with one. It's like, okay, that was it. Now everybody understands it. Everybody's on board.
Yeah, but in the end, because I still believe it's one of the most universal ideas in the world of sync. Because all the other solutions are things that work for something, or like you take a shortcut somewhere. Well, this is really a complete new way of thinking, which is universal. Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much.
I will be watching for JavaScript and Friends.
Cool. Yep. Yeah. And this is their meetup series, that kind of leading up to the conference. So the conference is going to be in August, I believe. So I don't know if I'm going to be actually at the conference, or if it's going to be an online conference. I don't think they've made their final plans on that. But yeah, this is a pretty interesting idea.
Somewhere I hope it's an online conference.
Yeah.
Yeah, the real conferences are a lot more fun, but yeah, if it's next to your door, it's good. But if it's on the other side of the world, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right, Michael. Yeah, see each other tomorrow night, I think. Yeah?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jan.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.